Good evening or afternoon for some people, wherever you are, and welcome to the ELJ Editions Be Well reading series. I'm your host for the evening, Nicole Tallman, and it is our New Year's celebration of poetry. And I have the honor tonight of spending some time with our three featured readers.
Look at
We
that
have
sounded.
Sarah. Oh, somebody's not muted. One moment. Sorry about that. We have Sara Ali, and we have Jane Huffman, and we have Sarah Moore Wagner. And just to give you a quick run of show, we're going to have each of our featured readers read for about 15 minutes, and then we'll reserve a little bit of time at the end for Q&A, audience Q&A. So if you have any questions along the way and you want to pop them into the chat, that's cool. Or you can just wait to the end and, raise your hand and we can ask our readers the questions that you have then. And I'm just so that we can maximize the quality of the audio. If you could please mute yourself if you are not reading or speaking, that would be fantastic. If you see me mute you, I don't mean to be rude. I just need to make sure that our readers are able to focus, okay? And we're going to kick things off with our first featured reader, who is Sara Ali. Sara is the author of Theophanies, forthcoming with Alice James books in January 2024. Sara is a Sadler Fellow and a recipient of the Sewanee Review Poetry Prize. Her work has appeared in the American Poetry Review, the Kenyon Review, the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day series, and other publications. She is the poetry editor for West Branch and lives in the Bay Area, California. Please give a warm round of applause for our first featured reader.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, Nicole. It's so nice to be here. This is my first reading of the year and the last one that I'm doing before my book comes out in a little under 2 weeks, which is wild. And this is my first time actually getting to read out of a physical copy of it. So it feels really, really special to do that at the top of the year. And I'm so excited to hear Jane and Sara read as well. I'm a longtime fan of your work, so this is so lovely. I will set a timer because my mind just goes blank. And I'll just get into it. So this first poem is Matrilineage Umbilicus. The first inheritance where you detach from an undug grave, in one language named Eve, the period preceding. But origin can't be an oculus. My abdomen rounded, from navel to sex, text appeared, Aleph, Abjad, mammalian. I did not want this. It appeared from figment. Witness. Matrilineage umbilicus. A puncture wound. Your mother. Call it provenance. Havva. Life source. Some say wife or mother of. Tethered to consequence, doomed to gape before a mirror. A line appeared. Linea nigra, the first letter inferred, Aleph, I, matriline. Look how I multiplied, I bore your body. Matrilineage umbilicus. The first inheritance, a puncture wound, where you detach from your mother. An undug grave, call it provenance. In one language named Havva, life source, Eve, the period preceding. Some say wife or mother of, but origin can't be tethered to consequence. An oculus doomed to gape before a mirror. My abdomen rounded, a line appeared from navel to sex. Linea nigra, text appeared. Aleph, the first letter. Abjad inferred. Aleph, mammalian. I, matriline. I did not want this. Look how it appeared. I multiplied from figment. I bore witness. Your body. Roadkill elegy. I lived in New England for most of my life, and I mean, roadkill is everywhere, but it feels like there was more roadkill in New England than there were people. So, yeah, I thought they deserved a poem. Roadkill Elegy. In good towns, good houses mourn what dies outside by closing windows. Bullfrog caught in a mower, black-red, driveway chalk, gray-red, tire-tracked doe, red-red. Under a sycamore, my throat whirls from pity to nausea. The suburban sky does nothing, sees less. Another small chest deflates at the edge of my vision before gas tank heaves and gut tries to follow. The angel on my left shoulder finds something of interest in the windshield blur of road, then red, body, then blood. He bites my ear and pulls hard my lashes. Look, he insists, where I point, where shells split, where color leaks. Look, he demands, my own palm spangled with crime. He walks across my blades and drags a fleshy bone behind him. In lurid dreams, I resurrect them all, or they refuse to leave, guilt dressed as grace. A frog or my fingers, the blade always a blade. In good towns, good children collapse snake holes, heal away ant hills for sport. Above us, a gray-necked warbler shrieks and shrieks a humdrum dirge for these ordinary deaths. I drive on, bound by time. He sings, knitted to his perch on a telephone wire, eyes fixed to each body I blur past, flaring car after car, like poppies on pool water, red. Thank you. I love the silent applause. It's so sweet. Okay, I don't speak French, but please pardon if I mispronounce this, but I have written a lot of ekphrastic poems and one made it into the book. So this is titled after a painting, Le Viol by René Magritte, 1934. I have seen a gecko tongue his lidless eye, head still, watching for movement, jaw hinging open almost imperceptibly in the modulating heat of midday. I have seen his throat ripple as he begins to chirp proprietarily, then flee. No, chase, another, evidently female, her body going slack, easily acquiescing to his. And I have seen a plum pucker in a man's tight grip, split sudden without protest on the banks of the Somme, vermilion sluicing his arm. Next to him, a woman, obedient window, taught to permit the outside to participate. I have seen him stain all but her face. I have seen her bruiseless face. I have seen pockets fill with stones, blue mouths agape in black depths of this river. I have watched crimes of looking blur into taking. I have been, and not put up a fight. A stone chosen for its smoothness, then hurled against the skin of the sea. Mother of Nations. By now it's almost boring. The peal of Sara's bewildered laugh. The sidelined matriarch, barren until she wasn't. I pretend not to hear Sara's bewildered laugh. How does a barren tomb sound? Waiting until she wasn't. I pretend to be honeycomb, sucked clean, scraped raw. The sound of a barren tomb, waiting each month for the inevitable wilt of a cervix sucked clean, scraped raw. Hajar had it easy until she didn't, sprouting, spared the inevitable monthly wilt. Sara's throat plumed right in God's face. Hajar had the easy job until she didn't. But enough. It's boring watching faith peel. Okay. Fatal music. The leaves of the fig tree are lobed and bright. In another country, they shade me before I learn to register them. Faith follows me like this, never heavy and whole with or without me. At dusk, I walk through an orchard and choir its fruit into the basin I make of my blouse. I love most that object which evokes another. How the split fig on my tongue leaks honey, gummy resin of eternal rivers. In the other country, I began to impersonate a more desirable self, penumbra. From mosque to mosque, I carry a book of elegies. A purple shawl I pull shyly over my hair. What is it you urgently ask for if not transformation? How hungry my gaze is to swell, but the angels are indifferent to me. In home videos, my child self presses her face to the camera and asks over and over, "Are you looking at me?" Seeing her face erodes something. Can you hear me? Okay, all good. Seeing her face erodes something in mine, though I've finally grown into her eyes. The angels elsewhere tune their instruments, polish their preludes. What they blow with their breath will make a song of death. For the trumpet shall be blown, and whosoever is in the heavens and whosoever is in the earth shall swoon, save whom God wills. Then it shall be blown again, and lo, they shall stand beholding. Quran 39:68. An orchestra then, a cataclysm that tunnels through the ears, and eyes still foolishly beholden to the sugar of each sclera. Once a winged thing pressed hot coal to Isaiah's lips. Once a swarm of feathers shielded the someday prophet from view, as hands pulled apart each rib, fished out his heart, and polished it. Ikra, Gul, read, say. But I am stubborn, red-eyed, waiting for a different imperative. So much could lie beyond the lattice of this language that I finger but cannot unlatch. How full a tender fig in my palm before I've bitten it. How sweet the fruit of a soil I was born beginning to leave. And I think I'll read just one more poem. I'll read one of the title poems of the book and end there. So this is Theophanes. If nothing else, at least this clemency, two whirls in each face, round pistols burrowed and searching. Tariq asks what I saw in my sleep. I weave a sweet lie about my mother's pomegranates, the kitchen tiles we bloodied, searching for the seed in each, rumored to belong to a mirror tree in paradise. The truth, a girl with melting eyes who holds my gaze all night, vitreous rivers gushing down our faces until one of us wakes. There is no unseeing it. The whites thick and clotted, erupting into weeds where they fall near my feet. My people don't share what darkness we've seen. Fear a message from the devil. Tariq says true dreams reveal themselves at the first inhale of sunrise. How to hold wide my eyes for the ineluctable light. On a disappeared horizon, a bush continues to burn, a lilied cervix swarms green, and Jacob is still sightless, 40 years lost to grief. Clouds drone above me, my two ordinary eyes sealed in sleep. Every vision is redolent and terrible. Every temporal sight, either a miracle or mistake. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wow, Sarah, that was so beautiful. Thank you so much for reading from your book. And I dropped a link to Sarah's book in the chat. It's so important to support poets and um, especially pre-orders of books, right? So if you have the means to do so, please support our poets' books. Next up, we have Jane Huffman. And Jane's debut collection, Public Abstract, won the 2023 APR Honickman First Book Prize, which is really impressive, I must say. Congratulations again, Jane. And it was selected by Dana Levin. Jane is a doctoral student in English and literary arts at the University of Denver and an MFA graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop. She is editor-in-chief of Guest House, an online literary journal, and her work has appeared in the New Yorker, Poetry, The Nation, elsewhere. She was a 2019 recipient of the Ruth Lilly and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Fellowship from the Poetry Foundation. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Jane Huffman.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicole, for having me, and to Sara and Sarah for reading with me this evening. I have a dog sitting next to me who's being a little bit antsy, so hopefully he doesn't bark. But if he does, just know that's part of my temporal universe at all times. Yeah, you can hear him. Um, so I'm going to read some poems from my book that came out in the fall, Public Abstract. And then I might read a few new ones too, in the spirit of a new year, some freshies. But we'll start with some books. We'll start with some poems from the book. Okay. I had a bout. I had a bout of something undefined, another rattle in the lung, as if I stood under the ladder of my childhood for years before I climbed a single rung. I had a bout of vertigo inside my chest, a clocking from within was bested by the worst of me again, as if my body shook off all its walls and doors and reeled the outside in. I had a bout of something like a flame, a burning in the core, like shame, the ache, the size and color of a thought, aboutness, like a cough I cannot shake. So I write a lot about illness, and my second book project is going even deeper into that theme. But a lot of poems in this book are about illness, and that was one of them. Okay, here's another one. The Rest. Still I keep myself. I take to bed. One lung is red, cut red flowers hung in pink water. My other lung is out of line. From one lung I tell the truth. From the other lung I lie. Cut pink flowers hung in red water. Like a pain, the truth is mine. The lie is that today I want to die. Cut red water hung in pink flowers. The rest of it is stillness, rest, a soft cough into a hard pan, a hard cough into a soft plain. Cut pink water hung in red flowers. Thank you all so much for being here. I love seeing your faces and your names. Okay. I reached an arm. I reached an arm across Louise. In doing so, I made a shape. It gave me pause, a wending shape. An absent mind, she says, goes limb to limb with a sublime. Our dialogue was saucerless and glassy, overgrown with cultures, like the sunless pool of water ponding underneath our garden chairs, a multiplying trawl of stillness, wisdomless, and gold with fish, she said, and this is where I stayed my listening, to scratch an itch of shame. A goldfish pond is mostly water, little gold in it at all, despite its name. Okay, here's a poem about feeling like you'll never write another poem. You know that feeling if you write poems. Damn it. Hush. A second. Shh. Okay, you can't hear him very much. It's very loud.
It's not that bad, Jane. We can
Okay,
hear
great.
you.
Okay. Okay. I'll just persevere. Without work. Without work, I'm still sure work will come. It always does. Like flu, expects to find a lung or drought, the desultory ember from the stove links and the leaves. I hope for accident, to be bowled down, pat dry, sent home, where work will wait for me expectantly behind the eaves and wave its broken plank at me. Then I like your analysis. That is just accompanying me. Hey, hush, please. Okay, I'm gonna read a couple of, there's a section in the back of the book that are all haibon. So they're like prose sections followed by like a haiku-ish little line. Okay, this one's called On Theater. I wrote a play, out cold in urgent care, heated blankets toweling my sweated hair. When staged, the actress playing mother held a wicker broom for acts 2 and 3, with which she beat the rug and beat the rug. A heavy tapestry rolled across the deck. It jumped with fleas, a cast of tiny specks that leapt with urgent hunger as she swept. Lucidly, I slept. I always do, when in duress, no escape from the world of the page. So I wondered how I would create the effect on stage, what props and practical effects, and who would clean up the mess. I quit theater because it spoiled other darknesses for me. Okay, here's one called On Influence. I'm under it, addicted to the family disease. My obsessions weigh on me. It's loud, the membrane language of the brain, but plain, like spoken language overheard. Like laudanum and anchovies to clean the nerve, to ease the rash, to being good, this paragraph. If I could think a single thought that didn't burn itself to ash, I would. Okay, here's one called On Difficulty. Difficulty is sacred, even this thought, like a yawn that fights its way out of the ear, private as a runny nose. The word say that begins Kay Ryan's seminal poem, Say When Rain Cannot Make You More Wet. Say its own unit of meaning until when arrives and the unit is transformed. Say when is tripled by rain, tripled by the rain, which rhymes with the poet's name. Rhyme is so public, weeping openly in a crowded latitude. And that's the last poem in the book. And I'll just read one final new one, I think, that I don't think anyone has heard. So you're all my very first readers of this one. And this is called After Simone Weil. And I recently experienced a burglary in my apartment. And I'm fine, everything's fine, but I wrote a poem about it, as one does. Okay, after Simone Weil. There are two atheisms, one in which I see the robber, a figure crossing my kitchen like the illusion of a man, and the other in which I hear him, the door closing and opening and closing behind him. When asked to describe the robber's face, I can in neither scenario. In one scenario, I mistake the robber for someone else, a man who crosses my kitchen but steals nothing. In the second scenario, the robber steals something of great importance but returns it 2 hours later. In both scenarios, I go to the trouble to believe he was here. And I think I'll stop there. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Jane. I always love your poems, and hearing you read is an honor. So thank you for spending this time with us. And Gromit was good towards the end. Simmered down a little bit
Be
there.
wised up, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Oh my goodness. We have one more reader tonight. So I'm going to go to Sara. Sara Moore Wagner is the author of 3 prize-winning full-length books of poetry. Lady Wingshot, which was the winner of the 2023 Blue Lynx Prize, and it's forthcoming in 2024. What month is it forthcoming, Sara?
Beginning of February.
Beginning of February, so very soon. Okay. I'm going to pop a link in here for Sara's book. Also author of Swan Wife and Hillbilly Madonna. I love that title, by the way. And 2 chapbooks, Tumbling After and Hooked Through. She is also a 2022 Ohio Arts Council Individual Excellence Award recipient, a 2021 National Poetry Series finalist, and the recipient of a 2019 Sustainable Arts Foundation Award. Wow, Sara. Her poetry has appeared or is forthcoming in many journals and anthologies, and you can find her online at saramorewagner.com. Please give a warm welcome to Sara.
Thanks so much. I've been a little nervous about this reading with 2 such amazing powerhouses, and now I have to go last, so I'm even more nervous. But yeah, your work was just phenomenal and moving, and I'm so thrilled to be here. And thank you, Nicole, for having me for this first reading of the year. I thought I'd read a few from Hillbilly Madonna and Swan Wife, and then a few from, I'm going to start a timer actually, because I don't want to go over too much, but a few from my new book, Lady Wingshot, which is about the life of Annie Oakley, who is also another Ohio girl. But Hillbilly Madonna is really about, my childhood and adolescence as an urban Appalachian, my family, generational trauma. So I'll kind of, even though that was second, I'll start there because chronologically it's first. And I'll just read a few from each, like I said. This one's called Heroine as Women's Work. This is my first tool, a needle, chiseled from bone, split-headed as Zeus. I work it back and forth, stitch through the tapestry, draw the thread I brushed, then spun, choke the wool in my fair hands. Watch me weave. I'll make it soft as the rest of the world. I've built it with this sharp little point, cinch together the vast net we drop into the pond. I feed him even with this quiet movement, back and forth. Today, I make him something beautiful. I give him little bits. First, my sleep. Take the smooth silk of my eyes, the yellow of my hair. Wine dark work this, toil. Fold my garment around the bones of every window. Black out the corners. I want to lose myself in this, to tangle. Bring me a beam to tie these threads, a reed to strike it down, labor light, the blush of these cheeks. Bring me someone to beat, like God, or at least to see what I've made of it all. And on my tapestry, I'll show you what I've learned about God, that a man will take you no matter how beautiful you make this world, no matter how beautiful you make it. This one's called Witch's Mark. After I stop shaking, you might find me filled with holes. My wrists, punctured cans, the palms of my hands. I've been pulled out of the brambles, pierced. Maybe you'll want to know how like a mouth this body, how the soles of my feet carry me despite the missing parts, how the blood puddles, and yet my father is the kind of man, like God, who would give me to the world damaged and open, perforated as a page, flapping in the wind. When I stop shaking, when you let me sit next to the fire, next to you, you'll want to ask me how. I'll only say the word rupture. My skin is this blank page I fill with batting, wound after wound after wound. And then the last one I'll read from Hillbilly Madonna is called Idle and Lawless. All beautiful like the side of the hill, dirt and rocks and wildflowers, the mosquitoes low over the rain-filled tire tracks. Bees hover, test the sugar in our sweat. With lit cigarettes pressed between our lips, we flick the ash onto the wet side of the earth. We are playing boys, Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. The creek is high. We wade barefoot, jeans rolled up to our inner thigh. We are looking for an image to latch onto, to start us rolling through the rocks. We want to run from something, towards something, to solve the mystery, to get out. I don't want to be Tom, I say, because he's always clowning, and let's be real, I am the smart one. We'll build a raft from all these sticks. We'll leave you with that needle in your arm like a box of stolen gold. Will leave you because I can, and making you this story just as a blood oath. I will borrow your lines and flee west. I am always the one to run from it. I am always the one to run. Thanks. And then Swan Wife's a bit different. Originally, they were kind of one book, as I was kind of just writing through all the poems, and then I discovered I'm actually writing two books, one about, Appalachia and one about marriage and fairy tales. And I kind of was trying to shove a whole life story into one thing, which those of you who have books, maybe that happened to you. And then I separated them out, and Swan Wife kind of took the arc of Joseph Campbell's hero journey. And so each part is kind of along that of, learning to keep your wildness in the bonds of domesticity, to which I see as a heroic act, keeping your art, keeping yourself within the marriage structure, which wants to erase you. This one's called Licentious, and it starts the book. When spring comes, I go naked to the lake near the hospital where I was born. There is my mother. She has brought me a dress made from April sky. The clouds hang low. Dragonflies flit over the surface of the water, cattails fat and meaty. She tells me, come out. Someone might see me, the bounce of my breasts, this ache. I will have to marry the snake, slithering into the banks, will have to marry the sun, a thick hand on my shoulders. How much I resemble my little mother even now, holding out fists of earth to the morning. Give me a husband who's never seen the glint of my skin, how it looks like a knife, like a fine hide to carry home to the children, to place by the fire. Give me someone who will weave me a robe from the grass behind my childhood home, will sit me in the swing where my mother used to rock me back and forth, singing, you have stolen my heart, now don't go away. When I call out for him, the possum hears me first, long-nosed, a jaw full of teeth. After I leave, in the middle of the night, he comes to my bedside, favors the darkness I've grown there, the way my sheets pitch up into a cave, how I've always been bifurcated, two halves of a girl, my want so pungent it reminds him of his mother, how she'd play dead in the road for the hawks, pretend to not be so lovely, pouch full of babies thick as disease. This one's called A Woman Like That Is Not Ashamed to Die, which is a line from Anne Sexton. A woman like that is not ashamed to die. I have a thimble for an eye, tin-sided, guarded. At night, the boy I married puts his finger inside the socket just to see. Out comes a worm. This is a ghost story. I'm by the campfire with my father, but he is asleep. He fell off just at the climax, boots so close to the flames he ignites. Now my father is a burning bush, and I can just make out his skeleton beneath the flames. For once, I recognize myself there, and also God there. My father says he's come to get me, to take me out. Take off your shoes. Barefooted, clean-faced, I'm back in my own bedroom. It's night and the window is open. Through a tear in the screen, I can hear my mother's voice whisper the story where the wife finds all the bodies in a locked room, where the closets all have spikes, and on every spike is a blonde head. How lightheaded I am suddenly. The strands of my hair could be webbing. I put my body over my husband's, hair cascading down. I've caught you, I'll say. I won. And with my tin eye, I'll watch the blood drain out of his face, and I'll want him to say my name forever, as it was before him. This is my name, the first one, unfathered, my only name. Yeah. And then the last one is towards the end, and it's called Self-Portrait as Housewife. From the trampoline outside, the windows look too thin to hold us. Thin as the dress I wore the first time we banged against each other in the back of the car. Today, webs flank the deck like benches to a table, white orbs of eggs, dusty in the spring light. I hold our child sleeping on my lap, wonder who might be watching me grow into this life. The way our daughter fills out the first little dress we bought her. Once I played in the street so long, I lost sight of my mother, the ephemera of the day floating up before my eyes like leaves, like the helicopter seeds tossed above our heads. Watch me fall in love with the transitory motion, a bouncing eye, the setting sun, your hands, this house. I'm coming in to stop the chill, and here we are, full of sleep and motion, my mouth open as a child's, unaccustomed to the way the world both reflects and refracts the body. And I'll read a few from Lady Wingshot. Let me see how I'm doing on time. Okay. I've got 4 Lady Wingshot poems here. And this kind of started as a project at the beginning of COVID because I was like really tired of talking about myself, which some of you poets know. You have to find another project. And then I got very obsessed with Annie Oakley, who was born about 45 minutes away from where I live now. So I got to go visit her places and her grave. And sometimes I sat on her grave and wrote. And this one's about one experience I have. This is called At the Annie Oakley Festival, there are so many Trump 2024 banners, and it has an epigraph. I love a gun. I've always loved a gun. And that's a quote from Annie. To love a gun, the way I love the water rushing over my shins after a rain, when we're children again, and we've plugged up the sewers. The world was mine, stuffing old worn towels in every crack. My mother would turn away, watch the rain ping into the water like little stones. And the higher the water, the more it reverberated, the more she could feel it inside her lungs, feel those lungs fill. To love a gun like water, to sit down next to the biggest oak tree on a hot day in June, to put it in your mouth like a glass of water, to let it fix you. To love a gun, to think a gun could clean you or the earth, could be God's deluge, could bring the rainbow back, the white dove with a branch in beak, the woman at the well kneeling, and you are there with your gun, and she must give you whatever it is you've come for, because you've come for something, because you must want something. And if I'm understanding it as I ought to, it's meant to fill you, cleanse you, keep you, smudge off that smell of chaos which sits in the bend of your empty hands in the morning, when they are neat as a child's, as simple and holy as Abraham's hands, above every lamb, above every boy, above every single wife he stood over like a storm cloud, like a gun. What does it mean to hold this in front of me, out to me, to hold this up as an offering to the Lord our God, as an example of a man with power so thick it could blow you apart? So maybe you can see from this poem, it's kind of about America's gun worship issues too, and the beginning of the American myth, which Annie really helped create. She was our first female superstar. This one's called Annie Oakley's Bullet Inventory. Her first bullet she buried under the cypress, and it grew into a lace dress she put on to show her mother, who was, at that time, a shining image of the second bullet, pristine and tall, slender as the beams holding up the little room where she slept curled like a mole with her sisters and brothers. Her mother was not always a bullet. Before she was 6, her mother was soft. Her third bullet was the rabbit she shot to feed her mother. It didn't even run from her, looked so planted it could have been a blossom she plucked from the fat earth. She was hungry. Her mother was hungry. Her sisters. Bullets are not easy to come by. Then the cooing mourning dove, the gray speckled sky, the white fence, which was a bullet, which she would take in her back pocket to England, plant to say, I've claimed this land in the name of America. Then the world was a bullet, and she sat side saddle like a lady, proper enough to ride without a single glance, to make every glance a bullet, to catch it in her teeth, fit it into her rifle, fire over her shoulder somewhere out of sight, and hit just where she was aiming, hit right at the spine so each target bowed and transformed, folded into itself, neat as a blanket, neat as a dress she'd hold up to the light to say, yes, this is mine. I made this. This one's called Even Her Hair Was a Mask. Annie Oakley emerged from a crushed train, from her little carpeted room in the rear car of Buffalo Bill's Wild West Show Grand American Tour, to chaos and slaughter, carnage of show animals, horses and mules split at the ribs, wood and bone cracked open like walnuts. Of course she was fine, but limping through the ruins of that great fable of the Wild West, first myth of America, laid to waste and smoking. Annie Oakley, barefoot and in her house dress, plodded through the wreckage, charred wood showing age and lines of each cut timber. It was a lie, though, that her hair turned white overnight. No rupture was so transformative. It was always platinum, poured from her head at birth, white spider silk, was like corn silk, her mother said, was like clouds, said her sister, like milk, said her husband, hands in her hair, whiter than her teeth and the whites of her eyes. It was unnaturally clean. The powder residue from her first gunshot darkened it. Blood darkened it. Those hands and sooty fingertips raked through it as any tool rakes through the land. When Annie Oakley showed up with a fistful of bodies, squirrels, quail, fat rabbits to sell to feed her mother, her hair was dark knotted as brambles, curled round like greenbrier vines, prickly and unkempt. Her hair was a thicket she left long on her back to say, this is what I am now, brunette and wild and covered complete, every little strand. Like America, I am not who you think I am. This is my final poem. It's just a small one, and it's the final poem in the book, and it's called What Annie Oakley Knew. The big yellow moon, strung low over the tree line in the morning, looked like a second sunrise to the girl in the field with her gun, and it said, I know what will come. What you intend is never the same as what happens. The flowers push little buds through the muck, have been to the other side of the world and under where father is laid. There is no rest. And her gun, though it was not living, looked her straight in her hazel eye, coughed a smoke that turned to a meadowlark. I will grow up, said the smoke, leave you out. Tell me what men will do, have done. The Bible says, love mercy, but not in the same way the earth speaks, or the gun, not by holding her quiet head in its hands. There can be 2 sunrises, one where a girl is barefoot hunting the last little rabbit to bring home to her widowed mother, and one where the girl is the rabbit, and she's older now, working in a gas station or grocery store, and bam, open fire, lineage. What should I? the girl says to the chipping bark on the hickory tree, and the cicadas, burrowed deep below her, hear, rise, chirp one loud sorrow she interprets to mean it's coming, no matter what you do. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It was just phenomenal to hear you read, and such breadth. Wow. I think we have about 14 minutes left. I don't know if the audience has any questions for our 3 featured readers, but if you do and you want to raise your hand, you could do that, or if you want to pop your question in the chat, you can do that too. If you're shy, I can read it for you. Or if no one has questions, I always have questions because it's just my inquisitive nature. So, but I don't want to monopolize. I'll let the audience go first. And if I don't see anything, then I'm going to jump in here just with a few thoughts that I have. No one? Okay. Well, I like to ask craft questions, and one thing that I always love to ask authors, if they're willing to tell me, is how they approached writing their book in the sense of determining which poems go in there and which ones don't. So I'll just go in the same order that people read, if that's okay. Sara, are you open to answering that question?
Yeah. That's an interesting question. I wonder if this would change for me if I had more books out, but with the debut in particular, this grew out of my thesis in grad school, and I think in thesis form, the book was a lot more autobiographical. And I think something that felt really important to me with my first book, as I worked on it in the years after grad school, was resisting kind of that tendency for people to sometimes dismiss first books as like entirely autobiographical or just some sort of catharsis. I think I kind of took that as a challenge when I heard someone say that the first time, and I was like, well, I am not going to do that. I'm going to intentionally, use persona as much as I can and try to create some sort of distance between me, Sara, and the matriarch Sara that I explore a lot throughout the book. And that felt especially important because it's my own name that appears so often throughout these poems. I think because my name is in there, I wanted to make it as clear as humanly possible that there's a difference between the Saras, and you have to do a little bit of research to know who it is that I'm talking about. I kind of wanted to put a little bit of pressure. So any poems that were in whatever version of the book I was working on that maybe felt too close to me, I really had to sit with them and think, like, are these just poems that I wrote because I needed to write them, or are they poems that I think other people should or could read? And that was a big question that I asked myself out as I was narrowing down what actually belonged in the book.
Wow, that's so fascinating and helpful to hear. What about you, Jane?
Yeah, I love the question. My book was a 5-year project that also started when I was doing my master's degree. It started as my thesis, and it no longer in any way resembles that thesis. I think maybe 2 poems survived. And the book has taken on so many different forms and shapes and manifestations over those 4 years because I was revising and revising, submitting pretty much constantly, like never closing the door on what I wanted the book to be. And I think because I was operating in these formal experiments that kind of came to make up the 5 sections of the book, that door, I could keep that door open pretty easily. Um, the Haibon, for example, emerged only like within the year prior to the book coming out, whereas the sestinas in the book are from 2017. So, it really represents a lot of shifting and moving. And the book even changed again after it was accepted for publication. I retooled the organization, pulled poems, added poems completely. So it's hard for me to answer that question because I don't know how to do it. It just kind of keeps evolving. This book really just kept evolving and evolving and evolving. It felt like this amorphous, shapeless thing. And I kind of just embraced that instead of seeing it as something I had to like shore up or overcome or force into kind of a box. So I think that helped the book become what it is today, which I'm happy with. I think for my next book, having this experience with the first one, I have a stronger sense of what I want to present to the world than I have, in the years past, just because I feel much more sound sort of in the project I'm doing. But I also never want to close the door on like the possibility that what I'm working on now could look very different even a year from now. Um, and it's done when someone says, we'll publish it. Like if it hadn't been picked up, it would probably still be evolving infinitely. So yeah, that's my very honest and hopefully not discouraging answer.
Oh, I love that answer. I think it's really real. And um, I think it's really hard to know when to stop a manuscript. I mean, that's something I always struggle with, and I'm always writing like 3 books at the same time because I just have a hard time focusing on just one theme, right? And I try to make them thematic with a narrative thread through them. So I guess it kind of depends on what kind of book you have, but that makes so much sense to me. And thank you for being so open and honest. The whole part about, sometimes we don't know exactly what we're doing or even what we're writing until more poems start coming out. And then we start to see, okay, these kind of seem like there's something together and maybe these are part of something else. And sometimes you have to, kill those darlings, maybe not entirely, but just not for that one particular book and shelf them to the side and say, maybe I'll pick these up in a different book, but they just don't seem to speak to the other poems that I have here. So I really appreciate that perspective. What about you, Sarah?
Yeah, that was completely my experience too with the first 2. Like I said, it was one thing. And then once I realized that with Hillbilly Madonna, I was writing kind of an Appalachian book, I kind of went back to the places and wrote into the holes of the manuscript. But those 2 books, I would say it was like a 5-year or more evolution. And like Jane said, I just kept going in and revising and revising. And then somehow they both kind of like got picked up in the same week after 5 years. of trying. But
Wow.
yeah, which was crazy. But I feel like Matt Bell, he said on Twitter once that like when you revise over a period of years, the same person isn't writing your book, like you have a bunch of people because it's different versions of you. And I really think that it adds so much to a book. Like the more you go in and do, the more it seems like multiple people kind of have their hands, like the complexity of the layers gets better. But with Annie, it was completely different. I went into that. Kristen, who was here, Noelle Kaufman and we decided to write 100 poems and see what happened. So I just wrote literally 100 Annie Oakley poems, and 100 Annie Oakley poems are not in the book. So I had to like cull some away, and then I added in a layer of thread about my mother's violent upbringing, and she was a sharpshooter too, and kind of the personal I brought into it a bit more. But yeah, I think it's different every time, and who knows. Like Jane said, every time maybe it'll be different.
That's
Yeah.
fair. I think we have time for one more question. We actually have one here in the chat, and I'll start with you, Sara. Did the title of your poetry book come first, or did the poems? In other words, did the title come from the poems, or were the poems inspired by the title? That's a good question.
That is a really good question. So for this book in particular, I actually can't remember when I came across the word that is now the title, Theophanies. But it came somewhere in the middle of something. I don't really know how to describe it, but the title definitely didn't come first. I was just kind of writing these poems, no idea if or how they might all fit together. And at some point, I just came across that word, and there was just this spark of recognition there where it's a broad enough term that it felt like something I could stick at the top of the page and just write poem after poem with that title. Theophanes feels like the kind of title that I feel like every single poem in the book could be retitled just Theophanes just over and over again. And that felt really generative and fruitful to me. And so that's kind of how I landed on that as the title, but it definitely did not come first. Other poems happened, then I found the title, then I tried to write a poem under that title, and then at some point decided that this is the word that makes sense for the book. Yeah.
I love that answer. You know, that's one of the things I struggle with the most is the title of books. And for my first book, I remember I didn't come up with the title myself. One of my friends did, because I sent the manuscript over and I said, this is my title. And he said, that is crap. You cannot call your book that. Why don't you call it this instead? And so I said, wow, thank you for being honest with me, because the title that he came up with was so much better. So shout out to you, Jacob Beloff. Jane, how about you? How did you come up with public abstract for your title?
Yeah, it's a good question. It comes out of academia, right? Like you're asked to submit a public abstract with a conference paper. And my
Oh,
little poet gear starts turning, and I'm like, wow, what a strange contradiction that something can be called public and abstract. Um, I just have always liked the phrase, honestly, and a poem with that title came first, which is the little first poem in the book. But I don't know. I think the title public abstract doesn't explicitly reference anything in the collection, but it's more of like a umbrella descriptor for the project of the book. That it really negotiates the tension between like a private self and a inner self, and a public self, inner versus outer, public versus private, abstract versus real. So I just thought it was very suitable for the book. And many people encouraged me to change it and make it something a lot more explicitly tied to theme. And in fact, out of those conversations, I titled my first section, About, A space BOUT, because I was tired of being pressured into making a book that was so much about something. Um, which I don't know. I thought it was kind of funny. But that could have easily been the title of the book too, honestly, About, which maybe would have been a little bit more commercially viable. But I just loved public abstract and I fought for it. And I think it hopefully informs the reading experience. So yeah.
I think that's a great title. I love it. I didn't make the connection about it being academic. So thank you for that insights. It's a great title. I think that you chose wisely. Sarah, what about you?
Well, yeah, my titles all kind of came second, and for Hillbilly Madonna and Swan Wife, they were both poem titles. Hillbilly Madonna was the title of what's now the first poem, which is called Fit to be Tied, which is about, two little girls in a field, like thinking about one day they'll be moms. And I changed the title of the poem and made that the title of the book because it kind of fit this idea of the Madonna horror, like innocence in women, and kind of the derogatory hillbilly thing. And then Swan Wife was a poem, and then I didn't like that poem at all, but I thought that fit the theme of the book. So the poem's not there, but the title is. And then Lady Wingshot, actually, it was called Little Sure Shot. And then the publisher was like, there's another poetry book called Little Sure Shot. So you have to retitle it. So then I found she has a poster of her that says Peerless Lady Wingshot. And I was like, Lady Wingshot is kind of the opposite of Little Sure Shot. And I kind of like that. So that's it. But all three came second.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're out of time, so I am going to end here, but I want to thank everyone for joining today, especially our featured readers. And This series happens the first Thursday of every month. And for February 1st, we're going to, that's the start of Black History Month, and we are going to celebrate accordingly with Juby Ariola Headley, with KB Brookins, and with Taylor Bias. It's going to be a really beautiful reading. So if you're free, I'll be publishing soon the announcement and the registration, and you can sign up to join us. And also I'll be uploading this downloading from the cloud and uploading this so that you can share it with your friends and fans and other people who might be interested. So one more time, I am going to encourage everyone to please support our authors if possible by purchasing their books, or asking a local library to order a copy. If maybe you can't afford one yourself, that's just as great. I'm supposed to end the series by saying be well, because it is titled the Be Well Reading Series. So I wish you all I know these are hard times for a lot of us. So I'm hoping that you were able to find some community and some support and here tonight, and be able to feel surrounded with love and great poetry. And I hope to see you next month. And if I don't, well, just be well. Thank you all again, and have a great night.